The space station Concordia floated in the void like a giant metal flower. Its silver walls caught the light from 3 distant suns, making it shine against the darkness of space. Today was different from any other day in the galaxy's history. For the first time ever, 12 different alien species had come together to talk about peace. Sergeant Marcus Chen stood at his post near the main entrance to the summit hall. His human uniform looked plain and simple next to the fancy armor worn by the other guards. The aliens around him whispered in their strange languages, but Chen could tell from their tone that they were not saying nice things about humans. Chen had been a soldier for 10 years. He had fought in 3 wars and lived through battles that would have broken weaker men. His face carried scars from plasma burns, and his left hand was missing 2 fingers from a grenade blast. But he stood straight and proud, doing his job like he always did. The other guards made it clear what they thought of humans. The Korthak warriors, who looked like walking tanks covered in thick gray skin, called humans meat shields when they thought no one was listening. The tall, thin Veltari guards, whose skin could turn invisible, laughed behind their hands when they saw Chen's simple rifle. Even the bug-like Zephyrian soldiers clicked their mandibles in what Chen had learned was their way of showing disgust. But Chen did not care what they thought. He had a job to do, and he would do it well. The summit hall was huge, with a ceiling that seemed to reach up to the stars. In the center sat a round table made of crystal that changed colors as the light hit it. 12 chairs surrounded the table, each one designed for a different type of alien body. The most important guest was Empress Veltara of the Zephyrian Empire. She was unlike anything Chen had ever seen. Her skin was clear like glass, and lights moved under it in patterns that changed with her mood. She was tall and graceful, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like golden fire. When she walked, her feet barely seemed to touch the ground. Her guards, the Luminari Corps, were just as impressive. They wore armor that flowed like liquid metal and carried weapons that hummed with energy. They moved in perfect formation around their Empress, never speaking, always watching. Chen counted 12 of them, each one at least 7 feet tall. During the morning briefing, Chen noticed that Empress Veltara kept looking at him. Her golden eyes would find him across the room, and the lights under her skin would pulse in slow, steady patterns. Chen wondered what she was thinking, but he kept his face blank and professional. "Human soldier," one of the luminary guards said to Chen during a break. The alien's voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Why do you stare at our Empress?" "I'm doing my job," Chen replied calmly. "I watch everyone and everything. That's what guards do." The luminary guard's armor shifted from silver to a dark red color. Chen had learned that red meant anger in Zephyrian culture. "You forget your place, primitive. We are her protectors. You are here only because your leaders begged for a seat at this table." Chen said nothing. He had heard worse insults than that. As the day went on, more delegates arrived. The fish-like Aquarians came in tanks of water that rolled on mechanical legs. The rock people called granites walked slowly on legs that sounded like thunder with each step. Bird-like creatures called the Aryans flew in circles above everyone's heads, singing in voices that made the air itself vibrate. Each group brought their own guards, and each group looked down on the humans. The Aquarian warriors carried weapons that shot bolts of superheated water. The granite soldiers had arms that could break steel with their bare hands. The Aryan fighters moved so fast they were just blurs in the air. Compared to all of this, Chen and his fellow human soldiers looked very ordinary. They carried guns that shot metal bullets, wore armor made of simple metal plates, and moved at normal human speed. But Chen had learned something in his years of fighting that the aliens had not. Sometimes simple was better. During lunch, Chen overheard a conversation between 2 Korthak officers. They were speaking in their own language, but Chen had learned enough words to understand. "Why are the humans even here?" The first one growled in a voice like grinding rocks. "Their leaders think they deserve to sit with real civilizations." The second one replied, "But look at them. They use weapons that our ancestors threw away 1,000 years ago. They die so easily. They are good for nothing except standing in front of real soldiers and taking the first shots." Chen felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his anger hidden. He had heard talk like this before, during joint missions with alien forces. Humans were always seen as the weak link, the expendable troops who did the dirty work while the superior species took the credit. But Chen knew something these aliens did not understand. Humans might be weaker and slower and less advanced, but they had something that could not be built or programmed or enhanced. They had the ability to choose to do the right thing, even when it meant pain or death. As the afternoon session began, Chen noticed that the mood in the room was tense. The delegates argued about territory and trade routes. Some wanted to exclude the younger species from important decisions. Others demanded special privileges for their people. Through it all, Empress Veltara sat quietly, her skin glowing with calm blue patterns. When she finally spoke, her voice was like music and everyone in the room stopped to listen. "We have come here to build a future together," she said. "But I see that many of us still think in the old ways. We judge others by their technology, their strength, their age as a civilization. Perhaps we should judge them by their character instead." As she spoke these words, her golden eyes found Chen again. The lights under her skin pulsed in a pattern that Chen's translator said meant curiosity and respect. The day was almost over when the first warning came. A junior officer rushed into the hall and whispered something to the station commander. Chen saw the color drain from the commander's face, and he knew that something was very wrong. "Ladies and gentlemen," the commander announced, "we have detected an unknown fleet approaching our position. They are not responding to our communications. All security teams to high alert." The alien guards immediately began forming protective circles around their delegates. The Luminary Corps surrounded Empress Veltara like a wall of flowing metal. The Korthak warriors activated energy shields that crackled with power. The Veltari soldiers simply vanished from sight. Chen and his human squad mates took their positions near the exits and windows. Their simple radios crackled with reports from the station's defense forces. "Unknown ships are ignoring all attempts at communication," came a voice over the radio. "They're jamming our sensors. We can't identify their species or their intentions." Chen checked his rifle one more time and made sure his armor was secure. Whatever was coming, he would be ready for it. Around him, the other human soldiers did the same. They might not have fancy weapons or armor that could turn invisible, but they knew how to fight. The lights in the station began to flicker and a deep vibration ran through the floor. Something was very wrong and Chen could feel it in his bones. The peaceful summit was about to become something very different. In the distance, alarms began to sound. The first explosion shook the entire station like a giant hand had grabbed it and given it a violent shake. Chen felt the vibration through the metal floor and up into his bones. Emergency lights began flashing red, and the peaceful hum of the station's systems changed to urgent warning sounds. "Hull breach in sections 7 through 12, a voice announced over the speakers. "All security personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill." Through the large windows of the summit hall, Chen could see the attacking ships. They were unlike anything he had ever seen before. The vessels were bone-white and shaped like giant skulls with long spikes jutting out from their sides. They moved through space in perfect formation, firing beams of purple energy that seemed to eat through the station's shields. "Void Reapers," whispered one of the Veltari delegates, and even though his species was known for being brave, his voice shook with fear. "The fanatics have found us." Chen had heard stories about the Void Reapers. They were a cult that believed all the different species in the galaxy should stay separate. They thought that aliens working together was against the natural order of the universe. They had been quiet for many years, but now it seemed they had decided to make their point with violence. The Korthak delegates were already moving toward their escape ships, their heavy footsteps making the floor shake. "We must leave immediately," their leader growled. "This station cannot be defended." "The summit is not finished," Empress Veltara said, standing up from her chair. The lights under her clear skin pulsed with angry red patterns. "We came here to build peace. We cannot run at the first sign of trouble." But even as she spoke, more explosions rocked the station. The artificial gravity flickered, making everyone feel light on their feet for a moment before snapping back to normal. Pieces of ceiling began to fall and cracks appeared in the crystal walls. Chen spoke into his radio. "Squad 2, what's your status?" "Taking heavy fire in the outer corridors," came the reply from Lieutenant Torres. "These Reapers have some kind of weapon that dissolves our cover. Johnson and Martinez are down. We're falling back to the inner ring." The alien guards were already moving their delegates toward the emergency escape pods. Chen watched as the mighty Korthak warriors, who had boasted all day about their 1,000-year military tradition, began running for the exits when the station's shields failed completely. The proud granite soldiers, whose people claimed to be unmovable as mountains, crumbled at the first sight of the Reaper weapons that could turn their rock-hard skin to dust. They carried their delegate away on their shoulders, moving as fast as their heavy legs could take them. The fish-like Aquarian guards rolled their tanks toward the water-filled escape pods, leaving trails of spilled water behind them. The bird-like Aryans simply flew away through the broken windows. Their beautiful songs turned into cries of panic. "All units, fall back to the core," the station commander ordered over the radio. "We cannot hold the outer sections." Chen looked around the hall and realized that something was very wrong. Most of the alien delegates were already gone, taken to safety by their guards. But Empress Veltara was still there, standing beside her chair like a pillar of light in the chaos. Where were her guards? Chen looked around frantically and saw them. The Luminary Corps, her elite protectors, were at the far end of the hall near a private escape route. They were not moving toward their Empress. They were moving away from her, Your Majesty, Chen called out, but his voice was lost in the noise of alarms and explosions. The station shook again, harder this time. One of the great windows cracked and began to spiderweb with lines. The air in the hall started to get thin, as the life support systems struggled to keep up with the damage. That was when the first Reaper boarding pod crashed through the weakened window. The pod was the size of a small ship and shaped like a black teardrop. It hit the floor of the hall with a sound like thunder, sending pieces of broken crystal flying everywhere. Steam hissed from its sides as it cooled from the heat of entry. Chen raised his rifle and moved toward Empress Veltara. He could see her clearly now, standing alone in the middle of the chaos. Her skin was flashing with rapid patterns of gold and silver, which his translator told him meant fear and confusion. The boarding pod split open like a flower made of metal and shadow. 3 figures stepped out, and Chen felt his blood turn cold at the sight of them. The Void Reapers were tall and thin, wearing armor that seemed to be made from the bones of giant creatures. Their helmets had no faceplates, just dark holes where eyes should be. They carried weapons that hummed with purple energy, the same color as the beams that were tearing the station apart. Empress of the Zephyrian Empire, the lead Reaper spoke, and his voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. You have chosen to pollute the purity of your species with this gathering of lesser beings. You will be cleansed. Chen looked around desperately for the Luminary Corps, but they were nowhere to be seen. The other alien guards had already fled with their delegates. The human security teams were fighting in other parts of the station. Empress Veltara was alone except for one scarred human soldier with an old rifle. The Reapers raised their weapons. Purple energy began to gather at the tips, growing brighter and more deadly with each second. The air around the weapons started to shimmer and crack as if reality itself was being broken down. Chen did not think. He just moved. He threw himself forward, putting his body between the Empress and the Reapers just as they fired. The first beam caught him in the shoulder, and pain like nothing he had ever felt before shot through his body. It was not just the pain of being burned. It felt like the beam was trying to erase him from existence. But Chen had been hurt before, and he knew how to keep fighting through pain. He fired his rifle, and the simple metal bullets punched through the lead Reaper's bone armor. The alien stumbled backward, dark fluid leaking from the holes in his chest. "Stay behind me, Your Majesty," Chen said through gritted teeth. Blood was running down his arm, but his grip on his rifle was steady. The other 2 Reapers fired again. Chen threw himself to the side, pulling Empress Veltara with him. They took cover behind the overturned crystal table, which began to melt where the purple beams touched it. "Why?" Empress Veltara asked, her golden eyes wide with shock. "Why are you protecting me?" "My own guards have fled." Chen looked at her as he reloaded his rifle. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. More boarding pods crashed through other windows. The hall was filling with Reapers, all of them carrying the terrible weapons that could dissolve matter itself. Chen counted at least a dozen of them, and more were coming. His radio crackled with desperate voices. "Hall 7 is lost, falling back to Hall 5. They're in the command center. Where are the alien security forces?" Chen knew the answer to that last question. The alien security forces were long gone, probably already in hyperspace and heading for safety. They had left their posts the moment things got difficult. But Chen was still here, and as long as he could still pull a trigger, he would keep fighting. "Human," one of the Reapers called out, his voice full of contempt. "You fight for a species that is not your own. Why do you waste your short life for an alien creature?" Chen stepped out from behind the melting table and fired 3 quick shots. One of them found its mark and another Reaper fell. "Because that's what soldiers do," he said. "We protect people who need protecting." The Reapers began to advance, their weapons charging again. Chen could see that his rifle was running low on ammunition. Behind him, Empress Veltara was trying to contact her guards, but her communication device only gave back static. They were alone, surrounded, and outgunned. But Chen had been in situations like this before. The only difference was that this time, he was not just fighting for his own species. He was fighting for an ideal that the aliens had talked about all day, but had abandoned the moment it became dangerous. He was fighting for the idea that different species could stand together, even when everything seemed hopeless. Chen dove to the left as another purple beam cut through the air where he had been standing. The energy weapon left a smoking line in the metal wall behind him, eating through the steel like acid through paper. He rolled behind a fallen support beam and came up firing. His bullets sparked off the Reaper's bone armor, but some found the gaps between the plates. One alien stumbled, dark blood flowing from a wound in his neck. But there were too many of them, and they were spreading out to surround him and the Empress. "You cannot win, human," the lead Reaper said, his voice echoing strangely in the damaged hall. "Your primitive weapons are no match for our technology. Surrender the alien female and we will make your death quick." Chen's answer was another burst of gunfire. He had never been good with words anyway. Behind him, Empress Veltara crouched near the ruined crystal table. Her clear skin was flashing with rapid patterns of silver and gold, colors that Chen's translator said meant honor and sacrifice. She was staring at him with her golden eyes, and Chen could see something like wonder in her expression. "Your guards," Chen said, without taking his eyes off the advancing Reapers. "Where are they?" "Gone," she replied, and her voice was filled with a sadness that seemed to make the lights under her skin dim. "The moment the attack began, they declared that protecting me was impossible. They said it was better to preserve their lives for future battles." Chen felt anger burn in his chest, but he kept it under control. He needed to focus on the fight, not on the cowardice of the alien guards who had abandoned their duty. Two more Reapers appeared at the far end of the hall, carrying weapons that were even larger than the others. One of them pointed his device at the ceiling, and Chen watched in horror as the metal began to dissolve. Chunks of the station's structure fell like deadly rain. Chen grabbed Empress Veltara and pulled her toward a different piece of cover, but another beam caught him in the side. The purple energy burned through his armor like it was made of paper, and seared his ribs underneath. Chen bit back a scream and kept moving. His rifle clicked empty. Chen dropped the magazine and reached for a new one, but his wounded shoulder moved too slowly. A Reaper saw his chance and charged forward, raising a weapon that looked like a spear made of crackling energy. Chen threw himself between the alien and the Empress, taking the energy spear in his chest. The weapon punched through his armor and into his lung, filling his mouth with the taste of blood. But even as he fell to one knee, Chen grabbed the Reaper's arm and pulled him close enough to drive his combat knife into the alien's throat. The Reaper fell, but Chen was badly hurt now. He could feel his strength flowing out of him with his blood. His vision was starting to blur around the edges, and each breath was a struggle. "No," Empress Veltara said, and for the first time since Chen had met her, her voice sounded fully human in its emotion. "No, you cannot die for me. I am not worth this sacrifice." Chen managed to reload his rifle with shaking hands. "Everyone is worth it," he said, blood speckling his lips as he spoke. "That's what makes us different from them." More Reapers were coming through the broken windows. Chen counted 8 of them now, all moving toward their position with the patient confidence of hunters who knew their prey was trapped. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy, and their bone armor gleamed in the flickering emergency lights. Chen knew he was going to die. His body was failing him and he had maybe 20 bullets left, but he also knew that every second he could buy might give the station's defenses time to regroup, or might let help arrive. He thought about his squad mates fighting in other parts of the station. He thought about Lieutenant Torres, who had probably noticed by now that he was not responding to radio calls. He thought about all the alien delegates who had fled to safety, protected by guards who had done their jobs. But mostly, he thought about the woman behind him, whose people could turn their skin invisible, but who was choosing to stay visible, whose guards could phase through walls, but who was choosing to stand and face the enemy. "Why do you do this?" she asked him as he struggled to his feet using his rifle as a crutch. "Because someone has to," Chen replied. "Because running away is easy, but standing up is what separates the good guys from the bad guys." The Reapers were close now, close enough that Chen could see the dark holes where their eyes should be. Their leader raised his weapon and began to speak in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "You have fought bravely, human, but your primitive courage means nothing against superior force. Step aside and we will honor your species with a quick death." Chen straightened up as much as his wounds would allow. "Here's the thing about humans," he said, wiping blood from his mouth. "We don't know when to quit." He opened fire with everything he had left. His bullets found their marks, punching through bone armor and alien flesh. 2 Reapers fell, then a third. But there were still too many, and Chen's rifle clicked empty again. This time he had no more ammunition. The remaining Reapers raised their weapons, purple energy gathering at the tips like miniature suns. Chen dropped his empty rifle and drew his combat knife, the blade looking pathetically small against the advanced weapons pointed at him. "Last chance, human," the lead Reaper said. "Move aside." Chen looked back at Empress Veltara one more time. Her skin was glowing with the most beautiful pattern he had ever seen, colors that his translator could not even identify. She was looking at him like he was something miraculous, something she had never imagined could exist. "Not a chance," Chen said, and turned back to face the enemy. The Reapers fired. Chen felt the purple energy hit him like a wall of pure destruction. It burned through his armor, his flesh, his bones, but somehow, impossibly, he was still standing. The beams that should have erased him from existence had only wounded him further. He looked down at his chest in confusion and saw why he was still alive. His rifle, lying on the ground where he had dropped it, was glowing with a strange blue light. Empress Veltara was behind him. Her forearms extended and light was streaming from her skin into his weapon and then into him. "The Zephyrian healing light," she said, her voice strained with effort. "I can keep you alive, but not for long. You must hold them off just a little longer." Chen picked up his rifle and saw that it was full of ammunition again, the bullet somehow restored by the alien energy flowing through the weapon. He did not understand how it worked and he did not care. All that mattered was that he could keep fighting. The Reapers were advancing again, confused by what they had seen but determined to finish their mission. Chen met them with renewed fire, his aim steady despite his wounds. Behind him, Empress Veltara continued to pour her energy into keeping him alive and fighting. But even alien technology had limits. Chen could feel the healing light growing weaker as the Empress exhausted herself. Soon he would be on his own again, wounded and outnumbered. That was when he heard the most beautiful sound in the galaxy. Human voices, shouting in anger and determination, coming from the corridor outside the hall. His squad mates had found him. The sound of gunfire filled the corridor outside the hall like thunder in a metal canyon. Chen recognized the deep bark of human assault rifles and the sharp crack of their pistols. But more than that, he recognized the voices shouting orders and battle cries. "Chen, where the hell are you?" That was Lieutenant Torres, his squad leader and the toughest woman Chen had ever met. "Second team, flank left." "Don't let them reach the hall!" That was Corporal Kim, who could hit a target at 500 meters with iron sights. "Come on, you alien freaks. Let's see how tough you are." That was Private Williams, who never met a fight he didn't like. The Reapers in the hall turned toward the sound of approaching humans, their weapons swiveling to face this new threat. For the first time since the attack began, Chen saw something in their movements that looked like uncertainty. "Impossible," the lead Reaper hissed. The human forces were scattered. They should be hiding in the lower levels. Chen managed a bloody smile. "You don't know much about humans, do you?" The main door to the hall exploded inward as Lieutenant Torres kicked it off its hinges. She came through the opening like a force of nature, her rifle spitting fire and her voice raised in a war cry that would have made their ancient Viking ancestors proud. Behind her came the rest of Second Squad. Kim came through low and to the left, his rifle picking off targets with mechanical precision. Williams charged straight up the middle, roaring like a madman and firing from the hip. Behind them came more humans that Chen did not recognize, soldiers from other units who had somehow joined up with his squad. The Reapers found themselves caught between two groups of human fighters, and for the first time in the battle, they were the ones who looked surprised. Their advanced weapons seemed less impressive when they were being shot at from multiple directions, by people who refused to run away. "Chen," Torres called out as she put 3 bullets into a Reaper's chest. "You crazy son of a gun! I should have known you'd find the biggest fight on the station." The battle that followed was unlike anything Chen had ever seen. The humans fought with a desperation and fury that seemed to confuse the Reapers. When Williams ran out of ammunition, he charged a Reaper with just his combat knife and somehow managed to bring the alien down through sheer aggression. When Kim's rifle jammed, he threw it at one enemy and tackled another one with his bare hands. But the humans were not just fighting with rage. They were fighting smart. Torres had positioned her people to give them overlapping fields of fire. They used the damaged furniture and debris as cover, moving from position to position in coordinated bounds. They concentrated their fire on one Reaper at a time, bringing each alien down before moving to the next target. Most importantly, they never stopped pushing forward. Every time a Reaper tried to retreat to a better position, he found a human soldier waiting for him. Every time the aliens tried to regroup, the humans broke up their formation with aggressive attacks. Chen watched it all from his position near Empress Veltara, still protecting her but no longer fighting alone. The healing light she had shared with him was fading, but it had done its job. He was alive, he was conscious, and he could still fight. Amazing, the Empress whispered behind him. The patterns of light under her skin were changing rapidly, cycling through colors that Chen's translator identified as awe and respect and gratitude. I've never seen anything like this. Like what? Chen asked, reloading his rifle and adding his fire to the battle. Soldiers who come back for their brothers, she said. In my empire, when a position is lost, it is abandoned. The survivors retreat to fight another day. But your people, they came back for you. Chen nodded, understanding what she meant. The station was lost. Any rational military commander would have ordered a complete evacuation. The smart thing to do would have been to write off anyone who was cut off from the main force and save the soldiers who could still be saved. But humans, Chen thought with pride, were not always rational. The tide of battle was turning. The Reapers, caught off guard by the human counterattack, were falling back toward the broken windows they had entered through. But Lieutenant Torres was not about to let them escape. Kim, Williams, cut off their retreat, she shouted. Nobody leaves until they're all down. The two soldiers moved to block the Reapers' escape route, their rifles chattering as they poured fire into the aliens. The Reapers found themselves trapped in the hall, surrounded by angry humans who showed no intention of giving quarter. This is impossible, the lead Reaper snarled, his bone armor cracked and leaking dark fluid. You are primitives. Your weapons are obsolete. Your tactics are crude. Yeah, Torres replied, putting a bullet through his shoulder. How's that working out for you? What happened next surprised everyone in the hall, including Chen. Empress Veltara stepped out from behind their cover, her forearms raised and her skin blazing with light. But this time the light was not the gentle blue of healing. This time it was pure white, so bright that it filled the entire hall and made the humans squint behind their protective visors. The Reapers screamed and clutched at their helmets. The light seemed to cause them physical pain, burning through their dark armor and making them stagger like they were drunk. The radiant flash, Veltara said, her voice strained with effort. A defensive ability of my people. I had never used it as a weapon before. The blinded Reapers stumbled around the hall, firing their weapons wildly. But they could not see their targets, and the humans picked them off one by one. In less than 2 minutes, the last of the aliens fell. The hall became quiet except for the sound of human soldiers breathing hard and checking their weapons. The emergency lights continued to flash and alarms still wailed in the distance, but the immediate danger was over. Chen slumped against a piece of debris, finally allowing himself to feel the full extent of his wounds. His shoulder was on fire, his ribs felt like they were full of broken glass, and he was pretty sure he had lost more blood than was strictly healthy. Lieutenant Torres knelt beside him, her hard face showing more concern than she usually allowed. You look like hell, Sergeant. Feel worse than I look, Chen replied with a weak grin. What the hell happened here? Torres asked, looking around at the carnage. Where were the alien guards? This place should have been crawling with security. Chen looked over at Empress Veltara, who was kneeling beside one of the fallen Reapers and examining his strange weapons. They ran, he said simply. All of them. The Korthak, the Veltari, even her own guards. They all ran. Torres followed his gaze to the Empress and whistled softly. So you stayed here alone? Fighting all these guys by yourself? Someone had to, Chen said. You crazy bastard, Torres said, but there was admiration in her voice. You magnificent crazy bastard. Across the hall, Empress Veltara stood up and walked over to where Chen was sitting. Her golden eyes met his, and the patterns of light under her skin pulsed with colors that his translator identified as deep respect and eternal gratitude. Human soldier, she said in her musical voice. I do not know your customs. How does your species show honor to those who have performed great deeds? Chen thought about it for a moment. Usually with a medal, he said. And a drink. Definitely a drink. The Empress smiled, an expression that made her face glow like a small sun. Then I will learn your customs, she said. And when this is over, you will have both. But even as she spoke, Chen could hear more explosions in the distance. The battle for the station was not over yet. 3 weeks later, Chen stood in the medical bay of the space station, looking out at the stars through a new window that had replaced the one destroyed in the battle. His shoulder was still stiff and his ribs ached when he moved too quickly, but the Zephyrian doctors had done amazing work. They had healing technology that could repair damage the human doctors said was impossible to fix. The station itself was being rebuilt, Work crews from a dozen different species were replacing the damaged sections and upgrading the defenses. But more importantly, the summit was continuing. The attack had not broken the alliance. If anything, it had made it stronger. Chen heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Empress Veltara approaching. She moved with her usual grace, but something was different about her. The patterns of light under her clear skin seemed brighter, more confident. Her golden eyes held a warmth that had not been there before. "Sergeant Chen," she said, and her musical voice carried a note of happiness. "The doctors say you are ready to return to duty." "Yes, Your Majesty," Chen replied, standing a little straighter despite the pain in his ribs. "Though I'm not sure what my duties are anymore." The Empress smiled. "That is what I came to discuss with you." She gestured to a nearby chair and they both sat down. Through the window, Chen could see the ships of the Allied fleet patrolling the space around the station. Among them were human vessels, no longer relegated to escort duty but flying alongside the most advanced ships in the galaxy as equals. "Much has changed since the attack," Veltara said. "The other species have had time to think about what happened. They have had time to feel shame." Chen nodded. He had heard some of the stories. The Korthak Warmaster had publicly dishonored himself and his guards for abandoning their posts. The Veltari Collective had sent formal apologies to the human government. Even the proud Granite Kings had admitted that their warriors had shown cowardice. But shame is not enough, the Empress continued. Actions must follow words. She reached into a fold of her flowing robes and pulled out a small crystal device. When she touched it, the air above them shimmered and formed a holographic image. Chen found himself looking at an official document written in several alien languages. "The Alliance Security Accord," Veltara explained. "All 12 species have signed it. It establishes new protocols for joint defense and creates a unified command structure for Alliance military forces." Chen studied the document, using his translator to make sense of the alien text. What he read made his eyes widen with surprise. "Human forces are to be given command authority over all Alliance security operations," he read aloud. "All member species are required to provide troops for integrated units under human leadership." He looked up at the Empress. "Your Majesty, this is necessary," she finished. "We have learned something important, Sergeant Chen. Advanced technology means nothing without the courage to use it. Superior weapons are useless in the hands of those who flee when the fighting begins. Your species may not be the oldest or the most advanced, but you have something we lack." "What's that?" Chen asked. "The understanding that some things are worth dying for," she replied simply. The hologram changed to show another document, this one bearing the seal of the Zephyrian Empire. Chen recognized it as a military commission, but the details made him blink in confusion. "The Empress's guard," Veltara said, watching his reaction. "My personal protection detail. I am dissolving the Luminari Corps and replacing them with a new unit. A human unit with you as their commander." Chen stared at the document. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a sergeant. I don't have the training or experience to command a guard unit for someone of your importance." "You have the only qualification that matters," she replied. "When everyone else ran, you stayed. When death seemed certain, you stood between danger and those you were sworn to protect. What other training could be more important than that?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about the alien guards who had abandoned their posts, about his squad mates who had come back for him, about the look in the Empress's eyes when she realized that someone was willing to die for her. "The other species," he said finally. "How do they feel about humans being put in charge of security?" Veltara's laugh sounded like silver bells. "They are terrified," she said, "and that is exactly how they should feel. For too long, they have believed that military service was about having the best equipment and the most advanced tactics. You have shown them that it is really about having the strength to do what is right, even when it is hard." The hologram changed again, this time showing video footage from the battle. Chen watched himself diving between the Reapers and the Empress, taking hit after hit but refusing to fall. He saw the moment when his squad mates burst into the hall, their faces twisted with fury at seeing their comrade wounded and surrounded. "This footage has been shown on every planet in the Alliance," Veltara said. "Your species is no longer seen as primitive warriors good only for cannon fodder. You are seen as the guardians that other civilizations aspire to become." "I don't know about that," Chen said uncomfortably. "I just did my job." "Exactly," the Empress replied. "You did your job when everyone else forgot what their job was. That is why the galaxy needs humans watching over it." She stood up and walked back to the window, looking out at the stars. There will be other attacks, she said. The Void Reapers were just the beginning. There are forces in the galaxy that do not want the Alliance to succeed. They will try to break us apart to make us afraid, to convince us that cooperation is impossible. And you think human soldiers can stop them? Chen asked. I think human soldiers will try to stop them, she corrected. And sometimes the willingness to try is all that separates victory from defeat. Chen joined her at the window. In the distance, he could see a human patrol ship docking with the station. The crew that emerged wore the new Alliance uniforms, a design that combined elements from all 12 species but bore the simple, practical styling that humans preferred. There's something else, Veltara said. The other delegates want to meet with you. They want to understand how your species produces soldiers like you. Some of them are asking if human military advisors could train their own forces. Chen almost laughed. 6 months ago, they thought we were barbarians with primitive weapons. Now they want us to train their armies? Sometimes it takes a crisis to show people what is truly valuable, the Empress said. Your weapons may be simple, but your warriors are not. Your technology may be basic, but your courage is not. She turned to face him, her golden eyes serious. Will you accept the position, Sergeant Chen? Will you help me build a guard unit that other species can respect? Chen thought about his old squad, now scattered to different assignments across the Alliance. He thought about Lieutenant Torres, who had been promoted to Major and given command of a new human training facility. He thought about all the young soldiers, human and alien alike, who would serve in the Alliance forces. I'll need to pick my own people, he said. Of course. And I'll need to train them my way, not according to some manual written by committee. Agreed. And I'll need them to understand that courage isn't something you can learn from a book. It's something you have to choose every day, every time it matters. Empress Veltara smiled, and the patterns under her skin glowed with warm gold light. I would expect nothing less. Chen looked out at the stars one more time, thinking about the future that was being built around them. It would not be easy. There would be more battles, more tests, more moments when good people would have to choose between safety and duty. But for the first time since the attack, Chen felt hopeful. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of enemies who wanted to tear apart everything the Alliance was trying to build. But it was also full of people worth protecting, people worth fighting for, people worth dying for. And as long as there were humans willing to stand guard, to take the hard assignments, to stay when everyone else ran, the Alliance would endure. All right, Your Majesty, Chen said, straightening his shoulders despite the lingering pain. Let's build something worth protecting. Outside the window, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was learning, slowly and sometimes painfully. That true strength came not from advanced technology or superior firepower, but from the simple willingness to do what was right when everything else was going wrong. And at the heart of it all stood a scarred human, soldier who had learned that sometimes the most important battles were not won with weapons, but with the decision to never give up, never give in, and never abandon those who counted on you to be there when it mattered most.